Hello. I'm delighted to be here, if only on video. I truly wish I could be with you in person, but that was impossible. Please know that I will be with you in spirit throughout the conference. I send greetings to everyone, but let me single out a few. Tudor Rickards and Susan Mosier, the many journal editors and editorial board members in attendance from Creativity and Innovation Management and other related journals, and doctoral students from across Europe attending the doctoral summer school. I'd like to congratulate Katharina Hultzler and Jenny Björk on taking over the editorship of CIM from Petra de Weerd and Klaas-Jan Fischer. And let me add a special word of thanks to Petra for her help as I prepared these remarks, and warm congratulations to Petra on the celebration of her 25 years in academia and at this esteemed university. Soon, the innovative journal we celebrate will have its own 25th anniversary. A little over 35 years ago, I began putting forth a set of ideas about a social psychology of creativity, how the social context might influence individual creativity, and the mechanisms by which those effects might occur. I developed my ideas in those early years by drawing on some existing theory and research and by doing a series of controlled experiments with children, college students, and occasionally with writers or artists. Eventually, to truly study creativity in context, I moved far beyond experimental methods, using more field-based methods, relying on interviews, surveys, and even daily diaries from people trying to do creative work inside organizations every day. Let me give you a quick capsule summary of what I consider the most important aspects of the componential theory of creativity that I developed over the years, and summarize some of the main empirical findings too. Individual creativity relies on three internal components: a person's expertise in the domain, creative thinking skill, and intrinsic motivation for the work, and one external component, the social environment, which in the case of organizations is the work environment. In something I called the intrinsic motivation hypothesis of creativity, I initially hypothesized that people would be most creative when they were motivated primarily by the interest, enjoyment, satisfaction, and challenge of the work itself, and not by external pressures or external inducements in the social environment like evaluation and rewards. In a series of experiments my students and I did from the late 1970s through the early 1990s, we essentially demonstrated how to kill creativity with such extrinsic motivators. Trust me, that wasn't our intention, that's just the way it went. For example, in one experiment, we showed that people who were working on an artwork with other people watching, or who had been told that their artwork would be evaluated by experts, produce less creative artwork, as judged by experts, than people who were simply doing the artwork as an activity in the experiment. And it was even worse for people who believed that they were being watched by expert evaluators. But in a later experiment, we showed that things weren't so simple. We found, as expected, that people who chose to make an artwork in order to get the extrinsic motivator of a monetary reward were less creative than people who simply did the artwork as part of the experiment. What we didn't expect was that people who were given the artwork and the reward without making that contract to do the artwork for the reward produced the most creative artworks of all. This led to another series of experiments and eventually to a significant revision of my theory in 1993, when I introduced the notion of motivational synergy. Under some conditions, rewards can add to intrinsic motivation and thus boost creativity. Another significant revision to the theory happened in 2010, when we realized that the internal components must include affect, and that affect is significantly affected by specific events in the daily work environment. In a study where over 200 professionals in 7 companies sent us daily diaries during the entire course of a creative project they were doing, we found that when people were in a more positive mood on one day, not only were they more likely to come up with a creative idea or solve a complex problem that day, they were also more likely to do so the next day, regardless of the next day's mood. That diary study also analyzed the work events that people reported in their diaries to see if we could uncover the primary sources of positive affect at work. We found that, of all the events that can lead to positive affect at work, the single most prominent is simply making progress in meaningful work. We call this the progress principle. In organizations, team creativity relies on the same internal components of the individual team members and the same external component, the work environment, which now includes everything in the organization. In organizations, the external component, the work environment, is itself composed of 3 components that parallel the internal individual components: organizational resources, like funding and time; management practices, like assigning people to optimally challenging projects and encouraging constructive idea discussion; and organizational motivation, a lived vision of the organization as innovative and open to new ideas from the highest levels. We studied parts of this elaborated theory by examining the effects of various work environment factors on creativity, using a work environment assessment instrument I developed in the 1980s and early 1990s with the Center for Creative Leadership. It's called KEYS. In a large validation study within a high-tech firm, my team and I found significant differences between the KEYS-assessed work environments of projects rated as highly creative by experts and those rated by experts as less creative. So there you have highlights of my research and theory on how the social context can influence creativity. As all of you know, research can be great fun. Also frustrating, but fun nonetheless. But it doesn't really mean much unless the word gets out on our findings and our ideas, unless we can have an impact on other scholars, management practitioners, and the general public. A little less than 25 years ago, CIM made its debut. It filled a unique niche in the universe of scholarly journals in 3 ways. First, its combined focus on both creativity, the production of new and useful ideas, and innovation, the implementation of creative ideas. Second, its openness to theoretical, empirical, and practice-oriented articles. And third, its embrace of European theorists and researchers who had been making some of the most important strides in understanding creativity and innovation. I believe that journal gave leverage to the impact of my own research and that of many others in a way that wouldn't have been possible without it. To a large extent, this impact depended on the courage, foresight, and steady hand of CIM's editors and the staff who worked with them. They shaped the journal into an authoritative source that scholars really use. Here's one example. My 1996 book, Creativity in Context, has been cited by a number of CIM articles over the past 20 years. But 3 of those articles in particular have themselves had a tremendous impact on other scholars. First, the article Creative Leaders, A Decade of Contributions from Creativity and Innovation Management Journal by Tudor Rickards and Susan Mosier. That was published in 2006, and it's been cited by 70 other scholarly articles. Second, Users as a Hidden Resource for Creativity, Findings from an Experimental Study on User Involvement by Per Christensen, Peter Magnuson, and Jonas Matting in 2002. That's been cited by 150 scholarly articles. And third, Managing People to Promote Innovation by Helen Shipton, Doris Fay, Michael West, Malcolm Peterson, and Kamal Berdi, published in 2005. That article has been cited by 223 scholarly articles. And here's another example, looking at the impact through generations of articles. The paper by Tudor and Susan drew on 6 of my publications, including the Creativity in Context book and my 1996 paper on the Keys instrument for assessing the work environment for creativity. We can trace one vector of the impact of my publications as magnified by the Rickards and Mosier paper. It has been cited 70 times by others. One of those is a 2007 paper in CIM by Chen, which in turn cites me. The Chen paper is cited by 92 others, one of which is a 2011 paper by Lynn and McDonough in IEEE. That paper, in turn, has already been cited by 44 others in the 4 years since it appeared. Magnification of impact. And this little exercise followed only one paper that cited Tudor and Susan's. The point is that the work you are doing really matters. It matters when you do good research. It matters when you communicate it effectively with the help of good reviewers and editors. And it matters when you publish it in creativity and innovation management, or help others to publish their best work by dedicating your service to the journal. I cannot imagine a better place for you to have this CIM community meeting than the University of Twente, with its focus on creative ecosystems and its new physical context for creativity, the Design Lab. May you all enjoy what promises to be an extremely stimulating conference. Thank you very much.